We are making a change to our radio show and podcast name. All right, it's a small change. If you're a fan of true crime, we are a true crime show with a twist. We started as a podcast and were recruited by radio quickly. At this point, we have 110 affiliate AM/FM radio stations broadcasting our show weekly to about 35 million combined population. What is this show about? What's the new name? All that more coming up. Welcome to the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. In the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show, we are joined by special guests talking about their experiences, the realities of investigating crimes, plus those who have experienced horrendous trauma. Police, first responders, military, and victims of crime share their stories. Hi, I'm John J. Wiley. In addition to being a broadcaster, I'm also a retired police sergeant. Be sure to check out our website, letradio.com, and also like us on Facebook. Search for the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. All right, let's get down to business. We are making a change in the name of our show, and albeit it's a very, very small change. The new name of the show from here on out is Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show and Podcast. It's Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show and Podcast. Our website is letradio.com. You can always go to letradioshow.com and it will redirect you to our correct URL. So, like I said, we made some changes in the name. It is not a big change. It's very, very small. However, what's not changed, the format of our show. We will still have the same kind of great guests with high-impact stories from their personal experience. True crime with a twist. That's what we talked about earlier. If you are a fan of true crime shows, which I am to a point, we are like them, but we differ in some ways. You see, many true crime shows use something like Wikipedia. They get the facts, and all they do is try to poke holes and create controversy. And what's not true? Well, what if they got this wrong? What if they got that wrong? And here's the most important part. The vast majority of people on true crime shows, the hosts, were never police. We're not involved in a crime. We're not victims of the crime. So they're reading someone else's story. That's where we differ. You see, all the guests on the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show and Podcast tell their stories from their experience. They're not into opinions. Well, we do cover some of that. We certainly don't do politics at all. And we don't have subject matter experts talking about what they do. Although many of our guests are subject matter experts. What separates us from just about every other radio show and podcast out there? Our content, our guests, which are comprised of two primary types of guests. We have law enforcement officers, active, retired, and former, talking about the realities of investigating crimes, a look behind the badge, so to speak, what it's really like, what television gets wrong, what many of us get wrong, the challenges of doing the job. Then, about 70% right now of all of our guests are either law enforcement officers, active, former, retired, other first responders, military veterans, victims of crime, their spouses or survivors, talking about trauma they went through, how it impacted them, and how they built their lives after. That trauma is often crime-based. So remember we talked about earlier that many of the popular true crime podcasts are people that are not related to the incident. That you won't find here. You find people that actually been there, done that, and have the t-shirt, so to speak. So we are making some changes. The name of the show is now Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show and Podcast. Our website is letradio.com. You can always go to letradioshow.com, and that'll redirect you to the correct website. You find every episode of the podcast at letradio.com. You can sign up for our free email newsletter at letradio.com. When I say free, it costs nothing. And we try to limit the sending to no more than 2 per week. We won't spam you, I promise. We've got a great Facebook page. Do a search on Facebook, if you have not done so already, for Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. be sure to click like. You'll see posts. We start around 6 a.m. and end around 1 a.m., 7 days a week, 365 days a year. We have old episodes of the podcast there. We have photos of heroes. We have stories that you won't find anywhere else, things you'll want to see, you'll want to share. You can find that and more on our Facebook page. Just look for and click like on Facebook. Our page is Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. Now, I get it. You're probably saying to yourself, well, it's not a big deal. He's not making a huge change. We're not. So as I said before, we are changing the name of the show. The radio show is Law Enforcement Talk Radio. The podcast, Law Enforcement Talk Radio and Podcast. The website, letradio.com. And you can find us anywhere podcasts are served. Quick history on the show. We started in 2017 as a podcast only. And a radio station in upstate New York heard an episode of the show, sent me an email, said, can you create a radio version, which we did. We self-syndicated the 13 different stations, then got our first syndicator. We now are syndicated by Talk Media Network. Their website is talkmedianetwork.com. And we currently have, at this time, 110 affiliate AM/FM radio stations across the United States, broadcasting our show weekly to about 35 million combined population. Then episodes go online as a podcast. So if you can't hear us on the radio or you miss it on the radio, whatever the deal, you can always find it here a couple weeks after airing on radio. The podcast is and always has been and will always be free. Do a search for Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show and Podcast. Now, you want to get a hold of me? You want to be a guest on the show? We'd love to talk. Send me an email, jay@letradio.com. That's jay@letradio.com. So I know it's not a big change, but it's a change nonetheless. The name of the show from here on out is Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show and Podcast. The Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show is a nationally syndicated weekly radio show broadcast on numerous AM and FM radio stations across the country. We're always adding more affiliate stations. If you enjoyed the podcast version of the show, which is always free, please do me a favor and tell a friend or two or three. I'll be back in just a few days with another episode of the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show and Podcast. Until then, this is John J. Wiley. See ya.